looking at what factors determine the magnitude of the slope of the IS curve. That is, what factors determine whether the IS curve is steep or flat. For this, we said, first we need to understand what we mean when we say the IS curve is steep versus the IS curve is flat. And we said this can be best understood by considering how the IS curve is derived. So here we looked at that a flat IS curve means that a given change in interest rate produces a large change in output to maintain goods market equilibrium. We've already looked at that. So it's important to keep in mind what do we mean by a flat IS curve. So now keeping this in mind, we want to look at what factors determine whether the IS curve is steep or flat. And the first factor is interest elasticity of investment demand. I, the B in I is equal to I bar minus PR, right? It's the interest elasticity or interest responsiveness of investment demand. Now, this is because recall the IS curve slopes downwards because interest rate decreases, investment increases, output increases. Now, where does interest sensitivity of investment comes? It controls the link between decrease in R and increase in R. Now, if investment demand is highly sensitive to the interest rate, what does that mean? That means a given change in interest rate leads to a large change in investment. So if investment is very sensitive to the interest rate, a given decrease in interest rate leads to a large increase in investment, and therefore a large shift of our demand schedule, and hence a correspondingly large increase in equilibrium Y. Right? A given change in interest rate leads to large increase in investment because of a large value of interest sensitivity of investment, and that in return leads to large increase in equilibrium Y. And thus, we get a flatter IS curve. As a given change in R produces a large change in Y to maintain goods market equilibrium. The link delta R to delta I is strong, right? This link is strong now. Because remember, a flat IS curve means that a given change in interest rate produces a large change in Y. And when IR is high, then a decrease in R produces a large change in investment, which produces a correspondingly large change in Y. So given change in R produces a large change in Y to maintain goods market equilibrium. Hence, we get a flatter IS curve. The second factor is the multiplier, but the multiplier depends upon MPC. Again, recall the IS curve slopes downwards because interest rate decreases, investment increases, output increases. This link between the decrease in interest rate and increase in investment is controlled by interest sensitivity of investment. The link between the increase in investment and increase in output is controlled by the multiplier, which we know depends upon MPC. If MPC is high, then the multiplier is high, which means a given change in investment causes a large change in output. Hence, the IS curve is flat because, again, a given change in interest rate produces a large change in Y to maintain goods market equilibrium. The link delta I to delta Y is strong, right? So a given change, here R changes, that changes I, which results in a given larger change in Y, right? Because of the larger MPC and hence larger multiplier. So, in short, in the diagram below, the slope of the flatter IS curve reflects either a high interest responsiveness of investment or a large multiplier or both. The steep IS curve reflects either a low interest responsiveness of investment or a smaller multiplier or both. And we've looked at the economic intuition behind. So whenever we're trying to understand what does it mean when we say the IS curve is steep or flat, or we're trying to understand what factors determine how flat or steep the IS curve is, the key is to keep in mind how the IS curve is derived. Right? Interest rate decreases, investment increases, output increases. The link between interest rate and investment is controlled by interest sensitivity of investment, and the link between investment and output is controlled by the multiplier, which depends upon MPC. So larger IR means for a given change in R, I increases more, Y increases more. So that's a flatter IS curve. A larger multiplier means for a given change in investment, output increases more. So that again produces a flatter IS curve.